morning, America. Today is July 20, I believe 22nd is when this is going to air. Um, this is our 10th episode of Dr. Dank's podcast. Of course, I'm the notorious Dr. Dank, Larry Nagel, your host for the show. Chris McNeilis is my producer and co-host. It's hard not to notice, we advertise Ganja Babe. Originally, we had a Ganja Babe, which was my co-host, a female co-host. Found that we weren't putting the best material, and we're sort of losing track and using a pretty girl as an enticement rather than addressing the seriousness and truthfulness of the nature of this beast, or the whatever you want to call this. I mean, I almost want to call it the animal that we are trying to attack because it feels that way. I've been fighting over cannabis and the realities around cannabis versus the lies that was told to me for over 50 years. I think you've heard me in prior podcasts talk about my brother Ron coming home from Vietnam, bringing me seeds from Thailand. I believe it was chocolate Thai was the varietal. That's what we always labeled it. But bottom line was it was from that point on, I had a great contrast in my life between what had been advertised to me and the propaganda I was fed, the brainwashing, versus the reality of what I was seeing. This plant, for over 10,000 years, I mean, historical records dating back 10,000 plus years, has been the single most utilized and beneficial product in the universe. There is, I stated in prior podcast, I believe even the one last week, that 2,500 viable different products could be made from this plant. That's just because I'm conservative and I try not to blow things out of proportion. Bottom line is, this plant's capable of 25,000. I mean, you're taking this as the 10th episode. Let's go times 10 on the capabilities and utility of the cannabis plant. I was laughing with Chris earlier today when he first got here. Word canvas. Its root name, or its root, what would you call it? Vowel? Whatever. Consonant, I don't know. I wasn't very good in English. But the bottom line, the root of the word itself, canvas, it comes from cannabis. That's because the cells, along with the ropes on the boats, on the ships, it started our civilization. Let's tell it as it is, and really propagated our civilization into modern day. Was made from hemp. I mean, canvas came from cannabis. That simple. It's antimicrobial. It's anti fungal. It has so many great qualities that allows it to be superior to almost any alternative fabric and other building and other materials that can be byproducts of, such as bioplastics, biofuels. Bioplastics, we can produce bioplastics from hemp for half of the price of what it cost us to produce traditional plastics. And all of the material that we produce through bioplastics processing is biodegradable. It's not going to fill up our landfills. It's not going to pollute our oceans. No, it's simply going to dissolve back into our environment. So it feeds our soil rather than degrades it, which is, cotton. Let's take a minute to talk about cotton. Cotton was the industrial answer or the rich man business answer, the wealthy businessman answer to industrial hemp. Um, Hemp was historically extremely hard to separate the fiber from the herd or the sheaf. Um, Took a great deal of physical effort if you were doing it with humans. Mechanically, it was very hard to do correctly and to get the right separations on a constant, consistent, and efficient basis. The cotton gin was much easier. Cotton's a much easier material to process. It's softer than hemp. But again, it's only one third as strong as hemp fiber. And the other facts that are scary about them picking cotton over hemp. Cotton produces half as much fiber per acre as industrial hemp does, but it consumes twice as much water in doing so. And the industrial hemp is 3 times stronger. I mean, what part of this is a no-brainer? Now, that alone has industrial hemp winning, clearly, correct?
Absolutely, yeah.
Let's talk about processing. Minimal processing required with industrial hemp. Cotton, you're using bleaches, chlorine, formaldehyde. Oh, the best part about cotton. Over half of the world's pesticides are sprayed on cotton to keep its annual growth alive, thriving, and that goes into the soils underneath the plants. Every single year it's raised on that property. Every single year it's raised on that. Hemp, on the other side, remediates the soil, detoxifies the soil, reconditions the soil, and sustains it for better growth. Well, it fixes nitrogen, much in the same way that alfalfa does, or similar legumes. If you rotate winter wheat for a winter crop and cannabis or hemp for your summer grow, you'll increase the yield of the winter wheat by 25%, 20 to 25%, but a minimum of 20%. Just by the amount of nitrogen you're fixing the soil and the amount of additional tilth or moisture retention ability, it just creates an ideal environment. This is the reason so many of us refer to it as a God-given plant. I mean, whoever you want to see or whatever entity you worship and you call your God, that's entirely up to you. But I do know this came from some creator in a specific design for a specific purpose. It heals, helps, and benefits so much of our life around us and so much of our health that to call it anything but that would be criminal. Yet it's been used as a stepping stool for big industry to profit. Well, the profits are ridiculous. I mean, literally the last 80 years of the Industrial Revolution with the DuPonts and their petroleum synthetic fibers and their other petroleum-based products. Andrew Hurst, who had huge timber holdings up and down the East Coast and in the West Coast, Northwest. Um, you know, not only did they realize the timber from their investment, but they realized all the paper. And that paper was used to print their propaganda and that was published all over the country. Hearst, I believe, even till today, is one of the largest publications of publishers in the world. Uh, Give me a little bit of feedback here, Chris. Well, I was going 100 miles an hour today.
You have a lot on your mind, Dr. Dank. I know that.
Well, thank you.
So you were just talking about 10,000 years ago plus the hemp plant and cannabis, and it's been around for a very long time. It's been known for a very long time. We talked about, you and I talked off camera about older civilizations using that plant as part of their healing,
Food stock. Yeah.
their food stock, part of being able to create things for medicine, to help people, to help those around them. The disconnect from then to now, you would think after 10,000 years things would improve, but here we are. What happened that that the hemp plant was just demonized early on?
There was such a concerted effort amongst the rich and powerful in this country. You know, what people don't understand, if you look back to the origins and the early days of our democracy and the formation of our government, one thing that comes to mind real quickly is melon. The melons, I believe, were part of the original financiers or capitalizers, the ones that capitalized the United States of America, along with some other large, wealthy, and very affluent families. Uh, these families used the creation of our government to their benefit. I mean, why wouldn't they? They were the ones that banked that business. And in their eyes, they seen this as a business. You got to realize not only does George Washington stand out for a number of significant reasons, very historic, but another thing that stands out about George Washington is he was a large cultivator of industrial hemp. In cannabis, they tell me. Okay, however you want to call it, hemp period. But I think old George smoked a little weed.
And, the first president of the United States.
The first president of the United States. The first president of the United States also demanded his wages to be in gold bullion. You know why that was? He said that our government was so unstable and so new that he preferred being paid in gold bullion, so he knew his efforts were being rewarded in solid assets than just getting paper drawn on a country that had just been organized. Yeah, George was pretty shrewd in a lot of ways. He was nobody's dummy.
So last week you talked about you thought that politicians should do drugs. And here we have George Washington, the first president.
Okay. I really believe that anyone in a political office, even if they're not forced or required to do the actual drug, do some virtual reality type of concept or conceptual virtual reality that allows them to experience the different drugs that are around. I mean, you know, we talk about heroin all the time. Nobody knows what the hell heroin does to you, man. Okay, I don't even really know what heroin does to you. I perceive what I believe heroin does based upon my experiences with other opiates. But, you know, do I know? No, I've never done heroin. The first days never came. So, and I hope to God it never comes. But perfect example. So for the politicians to stand there and legislate or to represent their constituents and legislate on laws as far as usage laws around drugs without any true personal knowledge, I believe is bogus bull. And it shouldn't be allowed. I mean, they should know what they're judging.
Yes,
For God's sakes.
yes, absolutely. You just touched on heroin too. You've talked about this before. We've talked about it on several past podcasts, but unfortunately, you and I, we both know people that have passed away from overdoses and heroin and what they call quote bad heroin, which is laced with something else, maybe fentanyl. There's those deaths.
Back in the old days, rat poison.
Yeah, rat poison. There's a lot of those.
You know, that's why Madison swelled up so bad.
She was on my mind. She was on my mind for that too. My point being that you and I both, in the audience, I'm sure some of them have those in their lives, that friends or family that they've lost from heroin. But I don't know. I know of nobody that's died from a cannabis overdose.
Okay. Now, this is a big, broad.
And we've talked about that with Scott. Scott, the Brigette, the first podcast
Yes, sir.
guest, was talking about the stats from drug overdoses. He says,
Right.
Don't tell me if someone dies, don't tell me they have cannabis in their system. Tell me they died from a cannabis overdose.
Exactly.
And you've never seen that.
Okay. If you research it, fact check it, dig as deep as you can. There is numerous reports that there is no known lethal dose limit for cannabis. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, there's the bizarre government-created, propagandized bull that's been published throughout time. Reports saying, "Oh no, man, it'll be at the third eye in your forehead, like Shiva. You'll have a weird perception of the world in a year." No, that's not. The truth of the matter is, very simply, see, I got talking about Shiva and the third eye. I lost my train of thought. Where were we?
We were talking about those that have died.
The only bad side effects of cannabis, folks, is a little loss of memory, but it's always present, real-time memory. What happened 5 minutes ago, you remember vividly. That's another lie they don't tell you.
We were just talking about.
But they do tell you.
We were just talking about cannabis being in your system, the deaths from heroin, but there's been no.
Oh, yeah. There's never been. Okay. One time I read a report that was done like in 1938. It said they made a cubicle, 1 cubic foot. They put 4 adult rats in it, and they pumped nothing but pure marijuana smoke into the chamber. No other form of oxygen. Just whatever was coming through that burnt joint, which couldn't have been very much. It would be almost nothing because the material was going to be mostly carbon that's been burned. I believe I might stand corrected on that. But anyway, it took like 7 hours for the first rat to fall over dead. They said, that proves it. You smoke enough of it, she'll kill you. I don't know I don't think you could take Arnold Schwarzenegger at the height of his career. Any stellar athlete with amazing lung capacity. Franco Columbu, his lifting party used to blow up hot water balls, explode.
Oh, yeah.
And they both smoked pot openly. Most people don't know that, but
Pumping Iron, the movie Pumping Iron.
Yes, sir.
The last scene with Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's laying on the couch smoking a joint.
That's right.
It helps him relax. It just helps him with recovery from the workouts.
And that was what, 1970s?
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing, isn't
it? And Arnold Schwarzenegger's stance is it shouldn't be illegal because it's just a plant. It's not a drug, it's a plant.
Exactly right. I think I referenced this the other day talking about opiates. Even though opium comes from the poppy plant flower, it's processed to turn it into various forms of opiates. Now, some of this, granted, is to be able to dose it accurately, but the rest of it's to synthesize the actual drug from the plant. Cannabis, chop off, chop off a big old nug, let it dry out, and smoke it. I mean,
How simple is
excuse
that?
me, roll it and smoke it.
How
If
simple
you
is
don't
that?
prefer a bowl.
How simple is that?
Yes, sir.
Straightforward to the point, that you would say just as God intended.
Yeah. I try not to wear out the God given, the God intended, God's gift. But, I'm basically a spiritual and religious man. And this plant gives me so much to be thankful and to worship for. That's why I consider it a sacrament. People say to me, how do you consider it a sacrament? I love Catholics on this one. Marriage is a sacrament. First communion is a sacrament. How in God's name can marijuana be a sacrament? Well, because it opens up a portal between me and my Creator. It allows me to communicate with my Heavenly Father. And it allows Him to lead me down the path that I need to follow. One thing I've experienced in life is when I follow the course laid out in front of me. Of course, I believe in predestination. I'm not. But if I follow my Creator's path, I used a reference in the past, reach up and grab the giant figure in the sky with both hands and just let him lead you. But if you do that, you stay in harmony with nature and the world around you. Thus, if there's cannabis that's available legally without restriction, you'll settle on that very, very quickly as being God's medicine for you. This is how I arrived at these conclusions. Now, if you tug against that finger or try to fall off that path or the fate that's been laid out in front of you, that's usually when you encounter disarray and destruction and failure. That's usually always been the result, in at least my own life, of when I went against God's guidance. I mean, not enough from Reverend Larry. I know it's Sunday morning and all, but no, I mean, come on, man.
Well,
I mean, part of the reason I was a drag racer, part of the reason I had no fear at the big end of a quarter mile, no matter how fast I was going, no matter what I was riding on top of, because I wasn't in a cage, I was sitting on top of motorcycles. The reason I had that fearlessness was because of my faith in God, because I felt there was something else beyond, that if my life was taken quickly, violently, there was some beautiful place, some beautiful reward that I could treasure ahead of me because of the righteousness of the life I've lived. And I believe that's the root of almost all, I don't want to say organized religion. Organized religion's got some complexities, but the root of all faith, you know? Um, let's go on. Let's talk about weed, man.
Those are some deep thoughts this morning, Dr. Dank.
Well, no, it's just, I'm so
understand.
very frustrated and tired that people will not, last week was a really raggedy podcast. To be truthful to my audience, last week I was really beat down. There's been that one and one other podcast that you can tell that I'm just really weathered from the law. Doggies sitting on my tail. threatening, this constant fear that because I'm unlike the because I'm unlike the image that they want to see me play, that they're going to prosecute or persecute me. They've already prosecuted me. Hell, they found me innocent, and they're still persecuting me.
Well,
think about that one.
That's a good segue, Larry, into previous podcasts. We've talked a lot about the laws here in Pennsylvania, the effect they have on those with medical marijuana cards. So the last couple podcasts we've talked about HB 983, which was House Bill 983, which would change the DUI parameters for like an alcohol DUI versus a medical marijuana based.
It wouldn't allow the blood draw to be the sole reason you had the DUI.
Right.
Same thing I'm suffering from.
Yes. Now, that was HB 983, and last night you and I were discussing HB 987. So just for some clarity here, HB 987 was signed into law, and it provides significant relief for medical marijuana patients facing legal challenges related to THC presence in their systems while driving. So what it does is HB 987, it offers protection for medical marijuana patients. It offers it offers retroactive relief. So it ends the active and pending driving privileges suspension imposed under previous DUI laws for drug convictions. This means that your driver's license that was suspended solely due to the presence of THC in your system without evidence of impairment, you may be eligible to contest the suspension or have it lifted. Another issue,
which is my intent,
which is based around that's a huge connection for you, and it changes the quote standard for impairment. So the bill clarifies that medical marijuana should be treated like other prescribed medications in DUI cases. So basically, law enforcement now needs to demonstrate actual impairment rather than just relying on the presence of THC alone, which aligns with Pennsylvania's laws with those of many other states.
As you've heard me say before, it's been a shit show. Mm-hmm. It only figures that somewhere dead in the middle of it, I would fall. God only knows I've been the poster child for the legalization of cannabis. I'm very proud of that too.
Under the thumb, we talked last week about being under the thumb.
Yeah. You know, and that's been the posture I've been forced to stay in since I was a 13-year-old kid. You know, this stuff goes way back with me, man.
Oh yeah.
And so I'm just a little taken by headline I'm just looking at here now. It says cannabis is more effective in treating muscular skeletal pain than traditional medications are, patients say in a new study.
Yeah, that's on marijuanamoment.net, and we were talking about that briefly beforehand too. What we're seeing, more article after article, story to story, of these things that you know about the positive, the usages for medical services. But I know with you, there's no such thing as quote medical; it's just marijuana. But in this case, though, the medical use
just hemp,
just hemp. But in these cases, though, the findings are positive for all kinds of things.
Okay, here is the root of the problem. Dear Bill, Snappy Bill, used to say all the time, because I was constantly, Bill, why aren't you doing clinical research on cannabis? You know everything we're talking about is fact. And it was always the same explanation, and it was a fact that the different departments that had to sign off on one single documented clinical research study, you could never get all those agencies to sign at the same time. So it totally disallowed, and it was part of the master plan, any clinical research to be done with the plant. Matter of fact, if you do a deep dig on this, you'll see up until maybe like 5, 6 years ago that 99% of every single dollar that was devoted to clinical research on cannabis was looking for the negative side effects. 99% of every dollar. Do you know how much money has been spent to determine that the only side effect this plant has is if you've never smoked it before and you smoke some really, really high THC, you might encounter a slight little bit of psychosis and paranoia. I'm not going to deny that. But let me once again qualify. That's the requirements to encounter that type of reaction. If you dose yourself properly and you start usage of the plant as a medicine, you very quickly see that this, okay, depending on the combinations and depending on the strains, you can have even low THC that's real high in like terpene like beta myrcene and get outstanding results as far as inflammation reduction. I mean, there's days that if it wasn't for high terp profile oils that I smoke, I couldn't be near as mobile and productive as I actually am.
So,
Fact.
we've talked off and on and quite frequently about the financial aspects of medical marijuana. And we've talked about.
Oh, you mean the weed costs so much to buy off those compassionate producers?
Yes, those same
that,
people.
that love the humanity.
Yes, they're doing it, Larry. They do it out of the goodness of their heart.
Yes, they do.
So, but we've talked about the financial aspects of medical marijuana. Medical marijuana for
maybe that's what Neil Young was talking about in the article.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Wonder how many dispensaries old Neil Young. Go ahead.
So for Pennsylvania, we're looking at last year for 2023 between 1.6 and $2 billion strictly for medical use. Now, Maryland has seen more than $1.1 billion in marijuana sales during the legal market's first year. So for Maryland, for their first year, they've made just over $1 billion. And that law has stalled here in Pennsylvania. And there's politicians that come out, and there's activists that come out. There's community program leaders that have come out and have said that Pennsylvania is missing out on this payday. And when you see the states that surround Pennsylvania, they have the legal stuff set up, the legal aspect of it set up. They're seeing huge profits after the first year, or they're about to see profits come in for this year. And Pennsylvania has stalled.
Well, this is all at a time that our country is in great turmoil. I pray that through the legalization and the revenues that are generated through the taxation of legalized cannabis, I guess that's a defining line between legalized cannabis and decriminalization.
Decriminalization.
That's the word I'm looking for. Doesn't it mean that anybody can smoke weed and you can do it anytime and you can grow as much as you want? Isn't that what that means, or am I nuts? Is there even a term for that in this society that they've created?
The definition would be that. The textbook definition would be that. But we're not going by the dictionary, Larry.
I mean, it is. We're not going by the dictionary.
Laws and politics get involved.
This last round with the law over this DUI has been the most ridiculous thing I think. I had to laugh. I was doing some research online the other night, and it pinpointed the police and the sheriff's departments as being some of the people that has profited the most from the criminalization or the prohibition of cannabis. Um, Now, I don't think there's anywhere that you can just look up how much money did all the police departments and all enforcement in the United States make last year just in what they confiscated and arrests on cannabis. I mean, I don't think those facts are those numbers are published anywhere because they really don't want you to know that they are raping the public to death over this. Okay, it was part of the justification for doing the medical marijuana. Now, all that was is a bunch of very powerful, wealthy men sitting around talking about this ridiculous amount of cannabis that was being confiscated, the amount of dollars that was being confiscated from it. And there's part of their friends, guys you probably went to college with, but son of a bitch, we can make it legal.
Yeah.
Ah. And why do you think, Chris, when it became medical marijuana, why do you think the price per pound stayed the same? The price per eighth of an ounce stayed the same as the street price. They built this industry. They built the medical marijuana industry around the black market. And I really don't know how you utilize any medicine or bring any reality to any true medicine if you anytime that you start from the dark side, how do you turn it into something sparkly white? And that's really what they've tried to do with the creation of the medical marijuana industry. Once again, for those of us that have utilized this plant and valued this plant and our whole life, I mean, very few years of my life did I ever not have cannabis in direct, I mean, going back to at least 12 years old.
Well,
you know,
okay. You said those numbers, getting back here a little bit to how much value just for marijuana the police for law enforcement here in Pennsylvania have seized. Okay. So in 2023, those stats do exist. In 2023, Pennsylvania law enforcement agencies seized approximately 7,000 pounds of processed marijuana, which was valued at $20.9 million. This figure is part of a larger total $68 million in prohibited drugs seized by the PA State Police through 2023.
Now, how much cash was taken along with that?
It says, it talks about 7,000 pounds of processed marijuana.
How many actual, what was the actual dollars that was confiscated in those rates?
Well, they're not talking, the figures don't, this is from pa.gov. While specific figures for cash seized directly from marijuana-related raids are not provided, the comprehensive drug seizures included various substances such as cocaine, methamphetamines, fentanyl, and heroin. But what they don't give out what was seized in cash.
They don't give out the cash.
But
that was,
what they're doing is they're lumping cocaine, methamphetamine, fentanyl, heroin in with cannabis.
Oh yeah.
So this is still Schedule 1.
When they did the queering of this nation on cannabis, they did one incredible job. I believe it could possibly be the biggest propaganda campaign and villainization of any single thing in our existence is the villainization of cannabis. Like I said, this plant is a miracle for 10,000 plus years, since the beginning of time. Like as if, and we were instructed even in Genesis, what is it, 9:13?
Yeah.
You know, there's talk of the green herb. So since the beginning of time, this has been provided for us. And, you know, and like you say, I have great frustration on it, man. It's getting worse and worse every week. Because, you know, like you say, I'm being punished right now for a crime I didn't commit. I made every effort to be 100% legal, 100% compliant with the medical marijuana program in Pennsylvania, and do everything I was told. And then was 100% honest on the stop. So I could be given a bogus, bad field sobriety test so he could get a justification or had a justification. Now, remember who we're talking about here. We're talking about a trooper that perjured himself on the stand, lied under oath in the court in Center County, and also falsified his police report. I mean, how far did he falsify the police report? If you go back in previous episodes, you'll see that he turned a stormy, windy, brutal day into the nicest day, nicest sunniest day of the summer. Basically, is the contrast between his description and the reality of what the police car cam footage shows. And again, I can also offer a complete transcript of the court proceeding, which also proves what I'm saying here. I mean, I'm not making claims about this man. I'm talking about the way some indiscreet police operate, which is a damn shame because it turns all the rest of them ugly, and they're not. That's the reason in the previous episodes, you know, I talked about the first two troopers that stopped me under suspension. My God, man, you couldn't have been more objective, and more fair. They were very obviously enforcing the law, but that's the limitation of what they did. Being that I was not impaired, it was clear to them that I was living and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. They let me go on my way, or at least I did after they left. The second two troopers, the lead trooper referred to me as a functioning alcoholic. Said that that's what the judge approved for me when he found me not impaired. I don't see any relevancy in any of that. Matter of fact, if anything, that is quite the insult and very much in contrast with the spirit and the thing behind the Medical Marijuana Act. I mean, I'm like a lot of other people that found an alternative medicine to traditional pharmaceuticals that I was relying on that bettered my life, actually saved my life. If I was still on opiates, my whole life would have been completely different, Chris.
I agree.
I mean, now I'm so healthy from the life I have lived and the amount of cannabis, and I believe this entirely, from the amount of cannabis I have consumed. I'm dying to start being able to grow enough that I can actually eat it as a staple of life. From what I've seen in livestock and what I've seen in various research studies, this may be the ideal diet for any human being. Along with killing your inflammation from the minor cannabinoids and correcting certain aches and pains that you experience in everyday life.
I want to jump around. I want to go back a little bit here. Jump back a little bit here to the two laws we've been talking about because they apply specifically to you and to your case. HB 983, HB 987. So 983 changes the proof of impairment requirement. 987 is to rescind suspensions based around marijuana drug tests for DUIs. With both of those laws being in effect, it seems like there's some relief for others. There's no relief for you. There's no relief for you with this these laws on their face prevent from what's happening to you happening to others.
Yeah, I feel I feel sometimes like I should just like put my hands up so they can be tied off that posting and give me a good old whipping. The first law, the 983, appears cannot be applied retroactively since it stipulates a effective date. So I don't think it's going to have any, at least from the initial replies from the Center County District Attorney's Office, it's not going to have any relevancy in this. They're not even considered. We are going to file a motion or a petition to the Superior Court for relief based upon, I believe, 987.
Yes. Yep.
That I'm working with my attorney this week. Hopefully, we'll get some relief. I mean, right now, folks, I'm going to have to file bankruptcy from the situation this has created, and it's all been created while I have complied and conformed to all of the existing state laws. I mean, when's this going to stop, man? When do I stop getting beat because I don't want to do their pharmaceuticals? Because I've learned and I know better.
You always said that you're the poster child for different things, but you are really, really the poster child for both of these laws, which seemingly someone else in your exact shoes would have, because of the two laws, automatic relief. But it's not a laughing matter, but there's no relief for you.
Yeah, and for those of you that haven't watched prior episodes or haven't had the chance to, I was found not guilty of impairment. There was 3 charges charged against me. The first charge, and matter of fact, we post on this page, the page with the charges, the pages that spells out the actual findings. But the bottom line is the first charge was for impairment, DUI related impairment. The second charge was witnessing a metabolite in my blood from a blood draw that showed that I had used cannabis within a reasonable amount of time, 30 days plus. Who knows? We know that the reality on that one, everybody, I believe, does at this point. The third charge that I was charged with was based upon a calculation they use, trying to determine some type of level of usage and whether you're conforming to the recommended dosages that you should be on for this plant. Now, to begin with, you do not get a prescription for medical marijuana. You get a recommendation. Recommendation says this guy's got anxiety. This guy's got pain. Okay, whatever it is. And a pharmacist or a bud tender at the dispensary looks at a chart. If they don't have previous knowledge or substantial previous knowledge, and makes a recommendation on what you should try. So how do we even determine? I mean, where do we get this baseline of where you should be at depending on what your ailment is? So what happened in my case is I was found not guilty of impairment. I mean, like I said, in previous episodes, I beat it to death. I'm not going to beat it to death again today. The bottom line is that Judge Grind from Center County, President Judge, determined that I was not guilty and not impaired from cannabis. Now, regardless of that, at the time, the law still stipulated that based upon a blood draw and these two other charges I was charged with, that I could be convicted of DUI. Now, this didn't give me one DUI. They split this like there was two DUIs. And I'm getting all the punishment that I would have gotten if I would have been found guilty of impairment. I mean, the analogy that was given to me the other day, which is, I think, the most accurate, is I could have been swerving all over the road at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, bouncing my car off of guardrails, got pulled over, fell out of the car, whiskey bottle in my hand, crawled up to the bottom of the cop's shoes or feet, and that would have been one DUI conviction. Okay? One DUI conviction. If I was found guilty of impairment, which of course is obvious. Now, I was living alive. All this shows in the court transcript. I mean, I even asked the officer on cross-examination, since I represented myself pro se. I said, so, when you spoke with me, was I livid and bright-eyed? Well, yeah, you were, but there was some redness in your eyes. Really? Really, there's some redness. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm coming back from the bank where I just had to cover a check for $3,500 that a man gave me that had insufficient funds. No, there's no reason in the world that I should be in the least way anything but totally relaxed and comfortable, happy with the universe around me, right? Come on, yeah. I wasn't red-eyed. As he's seen when he gave me the field sobriety test, I was not impaired. I mean, again, all this is a matter of public record. I just pray that my attorney is capable and the law allows for him to get a motion in some way to give us relief from this problem. I can jump up and down and scream, it's not right, all I want. That's not changing the price of my insurance premium. It's not limiting my mobility. And it's not destroying the quality of my life. Simply because I want to make my life better.
Well, let's bring things to a happy end here. Here's a study that we haven't talked about, but it's here.
We'll make it a happy ending. Let's get high.
While alcohol might facilitate sexual encounters, marijuana better enhances sexual satisfaction, study finds.
Is that why my life has been so incredibly wonderful?
So
Praise Jah. Rastafari. Much love, people. Have a wonderful week.
This week's episode sponsored by the Cannabis College of America. This week's episode sponsored by Buds and Brew Superstore. This portion of the program sponsored by Green Earth Cannaceuticals.